You see, money does fall from the sky.
Welcome to this latest edition of the Real Deal Podcast as we look at another episode of the hit series, epic series, Snowfall Season 2, Episode 5, Serpiente. Of course, it's Spanish for snakes. And of course, the snake was exposed in this episode. We'll get to that. Of course, this is episode 913 overall of the Real Deal Podcast. Happy to be with you. Our themes, hiding in plain sight. We'll talk about that. We see the character of Soledad, who we all know is a Fed. And we see her finally get exposed. Of course, in this episode and the scene that we'll talk about later on in the podcast. The quick recap of this episode: Avi returns, Soledad saves Lucille, Franklin visits Louie. Happy to see Avi back. He had been missing for a couple episodes. Of course, he was locked up. We'll talk about how he got out. But anytime Avi is in the episode is going to have some, he put some sauce on the episode, so to speak. He is that character is a great character. The charisma, just every scene he's in is something to watch. So it was definitely good to see Avi back in the mix here. The deep dive, we're going to deep dive with Louie. So at this point in the season, Louie, of course, is doing her own thing. She's with Claudia. She has left Jerome, and we see the effects of this. We see how Franklin's world is affected by this. For the last season or so, I had been really talking about Leon as Franklin's number two, and him being the muscle and what have you, and things of that sort. I was completely wrong on that. I mean, I was 1,000% wrong on that. The number two for Franklin is clearly Louie. It's not even a discussion. It's not even a debate. That Franklin might have Leon as his right hand man as far as they grew up together and what have you. And they have a tight, close knit relationship. And I'm sure he's known. Probably known Leon longer than he's known Louie, though Louie has been with Jerome for a few years. But it's in terms of the importance to that organization, to Franklin's organization, up until this point, and even throughout the course of the series, up until season 6. We know what happens with what happened during that time, over that breakup from the end of season 5 into season 6. But Louie is clearly the number two. Louie is the pragmatic one. She's the thinker of the crew. Her and Franklin are a perfect match because they both think, they don't operate in terms of, Louie can be an emotional character. I mean, she can be emotional, but Louie thinks before she acts. I mean, if you look at her over the course of this series, even up to this point, we're about 15 episodes into a series of 60 episodes. So we're about a fourth of the way through the series. Louie, once Louie became part of put Franklin on and did all that shit with Claudia, it was clear that she was his number two. She is the one that keeps him level-headed. She is the one. She's a little older. She's been through some shit. We'll see more of her backstory as the series unfolds. But Louie, I mean, even up to this point, Louie has been through some shit, and in terms of life experience. And again, that will be fleshed out more so, especially in season 3, and maybe even more so, even the back half of this season as well. So it is, without Louie, Franklin has a major hole that just can't be filled. It just can't. You got a bunch of, basically, he basically doesn't have a number two at this point without Louie. Like Leon is a soldier. So Louie, if I would bring this back to The Wire, if I were to equate this and compare it to The Wire, Leon would be like Weebay, okay, or Slim Charles. Louie is clearly Stringer Bell. Like that's if they were the Barksdales. Louie is clearly Stringer Bell. It's not even it's not even close. And Leon's a soldier, but Louie is that person that again keeps Franklin's head on straight and keeps Franklin, really has his attention and has his more importantly has his respect. He respects Louie. He loves her as an auntie, not his real aunt, but with being with Jerome, and he respects her. So just thought I wanted to deep dive her character and just how much of a hole that's missing in the Franklin Saint organization without her. Best scenes: Avi and Franklin. Avi comes back in style. Franklin returns with some groceries, and he sees some money. He sees a bunch of kids with some money being tossed in the air. And of course, it's our buddy Avi. Avi pretends as if nothing should ever change. Like he's just got out of jail. He expects it to be business as usual. Franklin, of course, is shocked to see Avi and really doesn't know. Now, again, this is only Franklin. Franklin's in this scene with Avi and Avi's henchmen. And, Avi basically said, "Hey man, we gotta come back to business as usual. Let's pick up where we left off." And of course, we know that will not end up being the case. But again, when Avi comes to a scene, it's a part of a scene. The scene is going to be, like I said, he's going to put some sauce on that scene. Like this character, whoever it is, I didn't know this actor before he played Avi. And I've recently seen him some stuff just out of nowhere. You sometimes you see actors after they're on a hit show and that have been grinding for years upon years. But this guy destroys this character. He plays this role to a T. It kind of reminds me, if you remember Power seasons 1 through 3 of Lobos, the guy that played Felipe Lobos. He does that kind of crazy, charismatic scene stiller. Doesn't get a lot of play, but when they're in the scene, they absolutely own that particular scene. Franklin and Louie. Franklin goes to visit Louie at Claudia's club. Of course, Louie is helping Claudia run the club. Louie is happier than ever. She's going on trips. She went to Broadway. She went to New York, went to Broadway, and she is living her best life with her boo boo Claudia. And Franklin, of course, desperately misses her. Jerome is doing Jerome stuff. Messing with random girls. They have one less person in the cookhouse, and Franklin understands the importance, as we all do, of how Louie to his entire organization, especially a budding organization that really is just getting up off the ground. And Franklin's got a lot of issues. Got a lot of issues within his organization. So he tries to convince Louie to come back. She basically, turns him away and says, "You want to come visit and talk about old times, catch up? That's fine, but not like I'm not coming back." And she, makes that clear during that particular scene. But we mentioned earlier with the Louie deep dive how vital she is to Franklin's organization, and we'll see that play out throughout the course of this entire series. The big scene in this episode, also Lucia, Stomper, Pedro, and Soledad. So Stomper comes in to Lucille's place in the warehouse, and they see Pedro. So this immediately triggers some animosity, and because there's some shit talking. Stomper basically, they remember Stomper and his crew killed Pedro's family, in essence. That's killed Pedro's father. So they're talking shit. They get into an argument with Oso. They get in an argument with Oso. Oso taunts them. Basically says that they can't move, they can't make any moves without the without the godmother, the queen pin of the group, Gabrielle. And this turns left real quick. Oso kills Stomper. Lucille gets shot in the shoulder with a shotgun. She gets shot in the shoulder. Luckily, it was just the shoulder. And then you have Soledad basically come out just and save the day, shooting both two of Stomper's men and saves the day. And Lucille immediately it stands out with that clearly Soledad was a Fed in terms of how the style of how she shot the gun is as accurate and as professional as you can be. So that this scene will have ramifications that will run throughout the course of the rest of the season. Like this is one of the most important scenes in the entire season 2. Huge scene. So with that, this scene will flood, like a lot of things are going to come out of this scene. It was supposed to be a routine deal turned ugly, and we know how connected the Los Monacases are and Stomper and how connected he is. So this will have a reverb over the entire season 2 for this season. Again, this is the only reason this scene happens because Pedro just happened to be there. If Pedro's not there, this probably doesn't happen. This was sparked based off Pedro and his animosity towards that crew and what have you. Franklin, Avi, and Teddy. So Teddy, Franklin basically threatens to go back to work for Avi. Of course, he is terrified of Avi, and who wouldn't be especially if you're a budding drug kingpin, because Avi wants Franklin back. Of course, Franklin is working with Teddy right now in terms of where he's getting his product from, and Teddy basically says, let me handle this. I got this. I can talk sense into Avi. You don't have to worry about anything. Franklin doesn't trust that. He says, look, I want to be there. So immediately, as soon as Franklin shows up and they meet Avi in this plush hotel, Franklin, Avi immediately is able to connect the dots and knows that Franklin is now working with Teddy. Teddy is also able to talk some sense into Avi, not so much about the product, but about a gun deal. Of course, Avi not only deals drugs, he deals guns as well. That's his main thing. His main thing is the gun. He's well connected all over the world from that standpoint, and they make a deal from that standpoint. Avi actually pays Franklin some of his respects as far as, hey, you broke my heart, but you are growing up in the world. So Avi actually respects that. And for Teddy, the big thing to come out of this too, not only the deal that Avi makes with Teddy, it's also the fact that Avi cut a deal himself to get out of jail. So he has extra security. He has this lush hotel that he's staying in, this plush hotel that he's staying in. And Teddy, is able to recognize that and really not so much use that against Avi, but Teddy's connected. He's well informed. He was able to put that piece of information together, but he's also able to negotiate the deal with Avi. So all three of them, in essence, are working together. You have Teddy and Franklin, then you have Avi and Teddy as well, and all of them at that point seem to be on good terms. Avi warns Teddy, look, if you don't have my money, I'm going to give him your name. Of course, he doesn't know that Teddy McDonald's his real name. Teddy is using the name Reed Thompson. That's what he's known by, Reed Thompson. So no one knows. The only person that knows is Teddy McDonald, of course, is his brother and people close to him, like his wife and what have you. So they make that deal. And again, Teddy knows that Avi cut a deal to get out of jail. MVP. Well, there was a big scene. So the final scene, I should have put this on here before we get to MVP. The final scene, you had Lucia and Oso. They sent Pedro and Soledad to help clean up with the bodies and help clean up the mess. And Lucille immediately is able to Lucille tells Oso basically that Soledad is a Fed. The way she shot the gun, the muscle memory, she picks up on that immediately and tells Oso that she is, in essence, building a case. He questions that because he says, why are we not locked up? She said, well, we're not locked up because she's building a case. She's got to know our distributors and what have you, and she knows our warehouse. She knows how we move. She's building a case. So Lucille picks up. Listen, Lucille's been in the game for a while. Sure, I'm sure she learned from her uncle and her father. So it doesn't take a lot for her not to. She's very smart. So she picks up on that. And now we'll see what happens moving forward with that. That basically Soledad's cover has been blown, but they don't, of course, she doesn't know that they know now. And he, also asked an important question at the end. Well, what does that make Pedro? That's how the episode, that is how the episode ends. MVP of this episode, Soledad, by default. This was hard to find an MVP in this episode. So I guess you would have to give it to Soledad based on the fact that she did save the lives of Lucille and also help maintain their business. But she also, in essence, gave her own self away with how she shot the gun. Also with Alden, you see Alden and Sissy getting a little closer. Alden, Alden is out of jail. He, they didn't have the fresh shave, but is looking relatively clean. Like he's looking cleaned up. Sissy comes home from work and she says, you haven't been a burden. You're not a burden to me at all, especially when she compares it to what Franklin's putting her through right now. Alden is probably one of the bright things in Sissy's life at this standpoint. So we'll see. We see them getting a little closer. You remember, listen, they have a son together. So, you got to keep that in mind. They have a son together. And there was some rough years, some hard feelings, but we see for the first time since Alden has been out, Sissy kind of take to him a little bit. Okay, of course, we'll see how that progresses in the next few episodes. That's going to wrap it up for this latest edition of the Real Deal Podcast. This episode will be out tomorrow. Of course, stay tuned for my week 3 NFL episode. A lot to do on that, especially with the college football. It was a big day in college football yesterday. And so that will be out. That will be out on Wednesday, recording on Tuesday, out on Wednesday. Have a great rest of your evening. So long.